You are now listening to the Artist King podcast.
I started off kind of with Mexican muralism and how the Mexican muralists influenced social realist artists of like the 30s. And then how the social realist artists then influenced the civil rights artists that influenced kind of street artists and contemporary artists.
This is DTM of DeltaTangoMike.com, and this is the Artist King Podcast, episode number 86, featuring the artist interview with Jake Prendez. Please take the time to download the Artist King Podcast in your favorite platform and listen anytime. We would like to hear your opinions and suggestions, so please direct your comments to dtm@artistking.org. The Artist King Podcast is available on iTunes, Spreaker.com, Stitcher Radio, and ArtistKingArchive.com. The Artist King Podcast is made possible by the support of our sponsors. You can find them on the partners page at the artistking.org website, and they include the Law Offices of Deborah Gonzalez Esquire, VelocityScreenPrint.net, RevolveSkate.com, OHub at Giant, Southside Sickest, Mix Manny Beats, The Biz Garage, and AzaleaCreativeGroup.com. Jake Prendez is a strong advocate for youth empowerment and the power of positive reinforcement. Jake grew up being told that he was no good, and as a youth he was put in special education classes due to undiagnosed dyslexia. Thanks to positive role models later in life, he began to turn his life around and became heavily involved in the Chicano Movement and the student organizations like MEChA. Jake's artwork mainly focuses on themes of culture, activism, social justice, pop culture, and satire. He collaborates with many art, youth, and community programs, and his artistic style ranges from indigenous influence, social realism, tattoo aesthetics, all the way to colorful urban style art. Recently, Jake has made the move back to Seattle as he continues on the path of positive reinforcement in our Chicano communities, reaching the youth. Check out the art and times of Jake Prendez online at jakeprendez.com, on Facebook.com artist Jake Prendez, Instagram.com/Jake Prendez. Now on to our Artist King artist interview with Jake Prendez.
My name is Jake Prendez. I was born out in Hemet, California, which is about an hour and a half out of LA, so it's like by Riverside area.
Okay.
Moved to Seattle when I was 5, so pretty much I'm a Seattle person. I grew up in Seattle, and then moved to LA for grad school almost like 13 years ago now.
Okay.
And then I've been here. Well, I was in Northridge, so I was going to get my master's in Chicano Studies. So I was living like pretty much close to campus for about 10 years, and then when I finished up the thesis and master's and all that stuff, I moved out here to Highland Park, and so I've been over here ever since. But the thing is, I was always out in East LA. When I was living in Northridge, it was where I did my kind of community work. It's where I organized, where I did a lot of my art shows. All that stuff was out here. And so I was like, this is where I need to be. So my commute to work has gotten longer, but my commute to the community has gotten shorter. So it's kind of been, a give and take.
Gotcha. All right. So, tell us about your first time coming across art or doing art. How old were you? And what was it that you did? Do you remember?
Well, it's funny. My parents used to give me those like Dr. Seuss and like Disney books. The ones that would come in the mail. You get like every month you get like 2 books. So they used to get a lot of those. And I would get so excited, and I would just bring out stacks of books from my room and I would just look at them, and my parents, said that they thought I was going to be this great reader because I was always had my face in the books and I was always going through them. But it was the art. It was the art that I loved. I didn't care about the words. I just loved seeing all those pictures. So yeah, that's how I think my first memories of kind of, I think, art were just those books. Drawing is like, in school was like the one thing I was good at. I sucked at school.
Drawing time, you were straight.
Yeah, I was like, and actually, because I'm dyslexic, and so my parents wanted me to be tested for dyslexia when I was like in kindergarten, first grade, and the school refused. They're like, "Oh, he's not dyslexic. We don't need to test him." It's an expensive test. The school didn't want to pay for it, so instead they just stuck me in special ed classes. And so I spent like what they would do in my school is like when we would get to math and spelling and things like that I sucked at. They would just like stick me in the coat room with like a special ed teacher and like a couple other kids. And so it used to be really embarrassing because I had to walk out like in front of all my friends and classmates like, "Hey guys, I'm not smart enough to hang out with you right now, so I'm just gonna go in the coat room here and recess." So like doing that on a daily basis like really took its toll on my ego. So I went from this very the good kid, like quiet kid in elementary, the teacher's trying to talk to us, we gotta be good, to like that angry teenager. When I got to middle school and high school, that's when I became a cholo and I started got involved in games and things like that, it was that manifested like kind of self-hatred and worthlessness that that kind of fed into it. But art was always the one thing I was good at. Drawing. My friends always, draw me this, draw me that. And we do art in class, like that was the one thing. Like, oh, Jake, you're good at that, and you're creative. And but everything else got shitted on in school, so I hated school, man. And what sucked for me, even though, was when I got to high school, and I got to take like art classes in high school and stuff like that. And I think that's where I should have found like a calling, or like art teacher should have like taken me in, or something. And they didn't like me either, because I was a cholo or whatever, and I scared them or something. They were liberal white, like art people, and I think they were too busy watching out for like the gay kids, and protecting them, that they just completely ignored me. Right. And so I just never my art was never nurtured, or like never like someone said, "Oh, you should do this, kid," Right. I was always told like, "Oh, that's street art, that's gangster art. You're not gonna make money with that, blah blah blah." And
you were taking art classes in school,
like high school,
okay.
Yeah, and it never got like really positive
reinforcement.
Yeah,
nothing, no support.
And so after high school, I stopped doing art, like because I had my son at 19. So as soon as I became a dad and all that stuff, I just stopped doing art really completely. Okay. For 10 plus years.
So you went to work, just got a job. Because you went to college.
Yeah, and I did ethnic studies. I didn't do art, Actually, I started off, I was going to do art. And it's there too, like people just...
Well, you went to college, you changed your career, and you finished college, and you got a job. And what kind of job is that?
See, my first job, and I've been fortunate. I've had pretty much all my jobs have been jobs that have been like had that tangible, like making a difference type of job, So my first job actually was running a food bank at a community center. So I did that for about a year or so, and then I started a graduate program in student development and administration. And did that for about a year, and I loved that job. I was working the multicultural, or like I got a job working in multicultural services while I was in school, and so I loved that job and things like that. But the funding ran out; they couldn't extend the position. It was like basically soft money,
Right.
And and I didn't like the graduate program that I was in. It was like a private Jesuit college and just very conservative, and they hadn't heard that I was like the student activist, like the administration had heard like that I was a student activist guy, and they threatened the MEChA group. They said like, if this guy has a position in your chapter, we'll remove funding. And so I was just like, for real, like you're threatening like take away their funding if I'm involved, like So this wasn't a good environment, and that's when I met Rudy Acuna in Chicano Studies at Northridge, and he talked me into like, oh man, you gotta come here, man, we'd love to have you. And so Yeah, so I moved here. I remember I applied, and I was on the quarter system there, and not realizing they were on the semester system here. So spring starts like in March for in the quarter system. Spring semester starts in January. So I applied like I think early January or something like that. And when I got admitted, and they were like, so I hit them up and like, when should I move out here? Like March something, and they're like, the semester starts in January. That was like a week, like a week away. So I pretty much dropped everything in Seattle and moved here with like a week notice, like, and everything, just loaded up my car and moved out here, man.
Took out.
Yeah.
So did you become an activist? Because of how you were treated in school growing up?
I think having compassion for people, fighting for the underdog. I think all of those things that kind of come with activism. Just having compassion for people. I think that was nurtured by it.
You were just drawn to it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it just kind of slowly... And I used to get... where I grew up in Seattle, it was quite like Atlanta. Like, there weren't any Mexicans at the time. Like, I was like the brown kid, you know? Like, white as I look, you know, I was the brown kid. Like, you know? And in elementary, like, I didn't, you know, kids don't know anything about race or anything like that, so it wasn't really an issue. But, like, by middle school... People started like kind of calling me. Oh no, I'm fine.
You know what? Yes.
Jalapenos?
Yes, that's a good answer.
And so I remember like middle school, like, you know, you kind of start to culturally affiliate, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Mexican. And at the time, like, I didn't realize Mexicans were not white. I didn't have that, you know, critical race theory yet. And I remember kids stopped hanging out with me. And I was like, what the hell? You know, like, I didn't realize that was an issue here. And then there was a huge, like, at that time, too, there was a huge influx of kids of color that were coming into the school. So the dynamic, the demographics of the community had just shifted, like, kind of in those years. And so, who did I hang out with then? I hung out with the kids of color. So, and there weren't, like, enough Mexicans be like a Mexican crew. There weren't enough blacks to be a black crew, so we all hung out together. And so we had a crew called Different Shades of Brown.
What?
So there were blacks, Mexicans, Filipinos, Cambodians, Vietnamese, and we all hung out together. And it was kind of like us against them kind of mentality. Like, and you know, the administration, like, we're always on our case. And in middle school, we were just kids. Like, there was no, like, violent, you know, tendencies like that. We were just kids, you know, but we like rap music and all that. And I remember one time we were walking down the street, like, we were just going to 7-Eleven, like, we were spending at each other's house. We were probably 14 or so. And we were just getting some snacks and going back to the house. It was nighttime, and 4 cop cars just corner us. You know, so we're, like, in the middle. And
these are spicy.
All right, thank you.
And had us on the ground, guns to our heads, you know, saying that there was a robbery in the area and it fit our description.
Right.
And so that was kind of our first foray into race, uses of police power, you know, and racism and all that. One of my best friends had a cross burned in his yard.
What?
Yeah.
This is in Seattle, Washington? Yeah. Wow. And
it was some punk kids that did it as a practical joke, but still, it was a fucking crop. But we became kind of this, like, a legit gang where we were running guns and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
You know, by high school, because we learned it from them. When you're constantly told that's who you are, that's who you are, that's who you are, you become that.
You kids are up to no good. All right, well, what kind of no good can we be up to?
and exactly. And they would, like, teach us. I mean, it was like, oh, that's what we're supposed to be doing? Okay, cool.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
And then, you know, I think, I went to community college on a whim, you know, just because, like, my best friend wanted, his parents were making him go, he didn't want to go alone, and so he tried to talk me into going. Yeah. And he enticed me with, hey, man, there are going to be hot girls there. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll check it out. And, you know, that's, I think, when I found, like, multicultural service department, and we started a MEChA program, and when I started looking at Chicanismo as like, well, it's not just kind of the, you know, blood in, blood out, and
not just the American,
there's more to Chicano.